Hi, this is John Sablan, one half of To Have and To Hold podcast, and Nichole and I are so very blessed that you decided to join us on this journey to improve your marriage, your family life, and your relationships. Now, as a disclaimer, Nichole and I are not perfect. We're not your counselors, and we don't desire to be your spiritual directors. What we do desire, though, is to lend this podcast as an opportunity for us to journey together in holiness and virtue, and to share our experiences of marriage and family life, and what we've learned, what we've encountered, so that it may bless you and your family and your relationships. Now, if you disagree, or if your experience is different, or perhaps if we say something in mistake or in error, you are free to absolutely reject it, my dear brother and sister in Christ. So we just wanted to leave that with you, and we thank you again for your as a one flesh union. We really did go through it together, right? Like the sleepless nights, a whole lot of them.
It was, I would say there was some more like restless. Like I slept, right? But I just was up a lot.
A lot. And I knew she was up a lot. She let me know when she was up a lot. Welcome back to another episode of To Have and To Hold. As usual, I am accompanied by my beloved bride. Hey, love.
Hi.
Today, we are celebrating a really cool milestone. Matter of fact, it's kind of part of the reason why you're all wondering, where did we go? We were gone for a couple weeks, and it's life, right? I mean, we're actually filming from a different room, filming from our actual our chapel. We normally are filming in a different room, but it's the 4th of July. We've got people over, family over, kids over. So nonetheless, we have to adjust, right? We have to adapt. The reality of marriage and family. Mm-hmm. So today, love, we are toasting to you passing your licensure exam.
Yes.
Yes. We should grab our glasses.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Let's do it. So grab your favorite drink. Huge toast, which we'll be getting into this episode about a lot of different things. But congratulations, love. A lot of hard work.
Thank you.
All praise be to God, but for using you as a vessel. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I did want to share about this. It's wonderful, obviously, to get to this part. Mm-hmm. But what led there, I thought maybe we can talk a little bit more about, because it was a long journey, and there were moments where I really questioned, is this the right thing to do? And I imagine that in the spiritual life, many people feel that way when they make decisions, and they start to question when things don't really measure up in the way that we expect, or when we didn't anticipate how difficult the road would be. So it seems to me that the Lord will shine like the first step, right? And then you take that step, because if he showed you the whole, and in my case, 7 years, this is a 7-year journey. If he showed me the whole 7 years, I would probably say, no way. There's no way I'm going to do this, right? So he shines just one step at a time. And I would say that's typical how it is when we even embark on our married life, where, we anticipate the marriage, the wedding day, and we have, plans, and we think about the different details of that actual day. We don't know what's after that, right?
Yeah, we have, and we say this a lot, especially as we walk with couples in marriage preparation, is a lot of people spend a lot of time, energy, emotion, and money on preparing for the wedding day, but oftentimes lose sight of preparing for the married life and the married vocation, which is not to diminish or trivialize the wedding day. It's important, but to be quite honest, right, it's more superficial than anything from the stuff that goes around and the planning and the parties and the reception. And the married life, the minute that all the gifts are open and all the people leave and life smacks you in the face, here we go.
Right.
No
right.
DJ or photographer is going to be able to help you with that.
That's right, right. And so as I was thinking about this episode, I really wanted to talk about my what I've discovered about myself as I try to prepare for this exam. So just some context that I was in an admin credential program that passed this academic year, and then we had obviously COVID, we had shelter in place. And so I was, thanks be to God, I was able to finish the admin credential program. In my mind, I thought, well, then I can start studying for my licensure exam. But lo and behold, because of COVID, they weren't offering it, so I had to wait. And then you were the one that actually looked up all the various testing centers and went through each one and then found the one which I didn't look at. Kind of looked over that location, but you looked into it, and lo and behold, it's offered in June. So I thought, well, let's do this the end of June. And so we registered. It was so funny because I think there was part of me that was so shocked that it was actually offered. And I thought, okay, let's do this. Let's just schedule it. And I remember our son asking me, are you ready? And I thought, oh my goodness, am I ready? I don't know. But anyway, we just moved forward with it.
Yeah, mind you, it's like, what, maybe 3 weeks before the exam?
3 weeks,
Yeah.
yes.
It was 3 weeks before the actual test date. Exactly 3 weeks, yeah, when we found the test date.
Right. And so here I'm thinking about reviewing the 3 volumes of study materials that I have. And now, granted, I had tried to study before, so this is not the first time I've ever opened up the books and reviewed it. In fact, I'm pretty anal about how to prepare for an exam, and I did recordings of the study material so I can also listen for the days that I couldn't sit and read. But what I wanted to share, and I'm hoping that this is a blessing for you as well, is that I recognize that I had this time crunch and I had all this material, and there was a temptation to just devote my entire waking hours to study. Yeah. But I knew that if I did that, I would be off kilter. So even though there was that strong temptation to push everything aside, I continued to wake up, do my morning prayer, having breakfast with you, doing all the things, the daily mass, sticking to my hour of power or holy hour of adoration. And there was still family time, dinner, meals in between. Workouts. And still having that balance. Now, what I recognize is that when I even though I continue to do my prayers throughout the day and in mass, I mean, that was like the non-negotiables for me.
Right.
But when I had studied more so that if I were to analyze my day, pound for pound, if I said, okay, this is how many hours I devoted to study and this is how many hours I devoted to prayer, if I was off kilter and I devoted more time to studying, I can feel myself more anxious. Did you notice anything different?
Yes.
Okay.
It was an actual tremendous feat, right, to try to schedule something 3 weeks. And for those of you who may be out there who are some type of professional clinician, right, whether you're a married family therapist or a licensed professional clinical counselor, even a licensed clinical social worker, preparing for that exam is a tremendous amount of stress and just a big feat. And so knowing that we scheduled it 3 weeks and that you had to go hard,
Yes.
And
yes.
knowing how.
Yes. Now, I'm glad you brought that up because it's not typical for it to take this long, aside from the coursework, because typically it only takes a minimum of 2 years to get your hours, but it took me 5. So
Yeah, you were fitting it in as you could, given your actual real full-time job.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, that's another point. But going back to, I noticed that I was off kilter. So that was my first, really aha. And so I had to make sure that I put the studying in its proper place. Now, because I don't study on Sunday because it's the Lord's Day, and I had the test on a Monday, and what I did is I took so part of my study materials, they provide a mock exam. And so I thought, I'll take the mock exam Saturday. Sunday I would not study. And then Monday I would take the test. So on Saturday I took the mock exam and I failed. And so talk about like temptation to want to study more and try to figure out, where are my weak areas and hit the books and all that. I really had to say, okay, Lord, I trust you. And I was started to pick up a book from, it's actually Father Jacques Philippe, and it is called, oh goodness, it's like the way of truth and love. Anyway, it's reflections on St. Teresa's of Lisieux's writings. And so I was reading that book, which brought a lot of peace, even though, okay, I just failed and I had to take this exam. And then we spend so much money on this exam. So I'm thinking about how much we spend to take this exam. We have to go, drive, 90 miles or whatever it is to get to the testing location. But I felt so much peace. And it was almost like that. What came to mind is, when Mother Angelica started EWTN,
Right, yeah.
and she had the satellites coming in, and they were expecting payment, right? Like some enormous
like
amount
$600,000.
Yeah, it was enormous, right? And so she goes to the chapel, and she's like, well, they're here. Like, you brought them here. Like, okay, so bring me the money, right?
Yeah.
And the Lord did that. But I kind of felt like that, like, okay, I already have a full-time job, and you called me to do this other, which is I don't know how many graduate programs I've been in.
Well, let me just state that because I'm very proud of my wife, even though she wouldn't say this, right? She has a master's degree in education, a school counseling credential, a school psychology credential, an administration credential, all 3 different programs, and then now a licensed professional clinical counselor.
Okay, so I'm a glutton for punishment, basically,
Yes,
is what he's saying.
She's a doctor times 2.
No, I'm not a doctor, but I am a glutton for punishment. So here I am in this whatever amount of this other program that I entered in, and I just kind of felt like that. Like, okay, Lord, you brought me here. I mean, I don't know what this is about, but I'm going to glorify you. I'm giving you this test, and just to glorify you. And I think that that's important in the spiritual life, is when we're doing certain things to really check our intentions. And I think of St. Bernard of Clairvaux he would talk about really making sure that you had pure intentions before you engage in certain things. So I really had to check myself, like, why am I doing this? Am I here to glorify God? Am I here to bring souls to Christ? And absolutely. So it's sort of like, Lord, this is for you, whatever your will is. And let the stress of the getting to the test location, taking this exam for 3 hours with a mask on, Lord, this is my offering, and do whatever your will is, but I pray that it brings souls closer to you through it all.
Now, I know we wanted to talk about, the parallel of this journey, both in the spiritual life, but even in the married life.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that popped into my mind when you just said right now about the purified intentions. So for married couples out there, those discerning marriage, those and just relationships in general, there's, keep in mind we're fallen creatures. And so there's a temptation to always look inward and have sometimes what may look like a good intention, but it's really an indirect self-love, right? Doing something really to get my own gratification or glorify my name, right? Or add to my credentials, whatever it may be. Not at all that this was the case, but it is key as we start to talk about this journey, because we're going to be speaking about just our own challenges during this time, both of us, right? As your husband, trying to kind of ride shotgun with you on this journey, and it was very much a spiritual test for me. But for those out there, just to look at that, like if you're not checking your intentions, as Nichole said, and saying, in whatever it is you plan on doing, if you're going to take this job promotion, is it about glorifying God? Is about the bettering your ability to provide for your family in a way that doesn't take you away from your family, right? It doesn't get you caught up in the material world or in titles and power and whatever it is, right? I mean, sometimes we hide behind what we say is our good intentions, but it's really not. It's actually more inward focus. And so I just kind of wanted to make that point, because in this case, it's been a 7-year journey, because this is a part of what we feel called to as a ministry.
Right.
Right. As far as the ability to help bring healing to souls that are broken and need God more than anything through counseling and therapy.
And I think about, again, when you're asked in the spiritual life, again, God shines the first light, or the light, illuminates the first step.
Yeah.
And, you can think about, like, for instance, the studying, the preparation, all these things, or whatever that God is asking you to do. And there's a thought, like, you can't do this. And that's so true. I can't do it. Like, without God's grace, there's no way that I'd be able to do this. But if God is asking me, it's truly of God. And he's asking me to do this, he's going to give me the grace to carry it out. He's not going to abandon me through the process. And so I had to trust that God was going to do this. If this is really his call, not take this away from me because I don't want it. In fact, I'm okay with doing my full-time job over here.
Right.
And so, it was a complete surrender. And I think about faith, and the definition. One of the definitions of faith is having confidence in what you don't see. And I know there's multiple, definitions, but really trusting in God, which is, our Heavenly Father, which may be difficult for some of us who have, maybe been really hurt by our earthly fathers. And so just thinking, Lord, are you really there? Are you really gonna, come through, support me throughout the way? And really I had to set all those doubts aside, and then focus on, again, glorifying God, giving him this task, and making this a complete offering. Okay, if this outcome is that I fail this test, okay, so be it. And if you want me to prepare again, if this is your will, I will do it. And that huge sacrifice.
Can I just interject for a second? Because I think one of the things I wanted to mention as you were talking about the journey and putting how you approached it this time, and approached the exam, the importance of putting things in their proper place. Because I'm going to be honest with you, Nichole is a way better job, like keeping the Lord's Day Sabbath, right? Keeping everything out of, where we, because of your conviction of that, and then nudging me and really slapping upside my head, not literally.
Yeah,
no, figuratively for sure. Remember that 2x4, that Jesus 2x4? It hurts. But it was, just staying true to that. And whereas a lot of people wouldn't do that, they would use this as, hey, I only have 3 weeks. The way that you balance in that 3-week time between family and friendships, right? And fellowship and prayer life, and just maintaining a healthy balance. I commend you for it, because it was just a beautiful witness of faith, right? Because anybody, like you said, on Saturday, so again, we'll echo it back, Saturday failing the mock exam, Sunday is really the only time, because Monday morning you're going to have to spend your time driving and getting to the place ahead of time, so on and so forth. But to say, you know what? It's all you, right? I've done what I can do to this point. Regardless of what I'm feeling, I'm going to do it anyway. And I think that's just a lesson for us all. I mean, it was definitely something where, as your husband, I was very proud and blessed to be there with you, just to be like, she's about it. She's about her faith, and it's not just some, superficial saying or podcast or whatever it may be. It's actually a lived, real thing in your life.
Well, absolutely. That's what I want. And I want to also encourage you that if God is asking you to do something and you're like, oh my goodness, how can I do this? God will give you the grace, but you have to give it to him. And some people will ask, but how do I increase my faith? It's really you have to exercise it. You have to put yourself in those situations that are really scary. I'm not going to lie. They're not easy. And you have to exercise faith. And it will stretch you. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to go through this. I mean, there's many other things I could think of that I would rather do than put my nose in a book. And there's other things that the Lord may be asking you, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, so there's lots of other things that I would rather do. But if it's to do the Lord's will and it's to glorify his name, how much more fulfilling. Now, I don't know what this means, this test. Passing this test, I don't know what it means. And I thank God for that, because I think that if he really showed me, I'd probably freak out.
Right.
So all I know is so far that I passed, and that's it.
Giddy up.
And just continue to pray and be open to God's will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny in our home, because this has been a 7-year journey, and so now that Nichole has passed his exam, it's just like, we're like, oh, we're here.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Right.
And I think that's the part where the exciting part of it all, meaning that when you seek to do the will of God, and you want to use your gifts to glorify his name and to save souls, and when you follow that path, like I said, giddy up, gear up. And that's a part of it right now, is exercising that level of trust and obedience in God and his path and design for us and plans for us. So let's go back to those wounds, if you don't mind, love, about some of those challenges that we had during this journey. If I can start, sure. I think part of my challenge was, so being a wounded individual, I think, and just, I got all kinds of issues. I have issues with my earthly father. So I definitely had an estranged relationship with our Heavenly Father because of that. God has proven himself to me over and over again, the miracles he has in my own life, in our marriage, in our family. I mean, I've got so many to count. God doesn't need to prove himself to me anymore. But there was definitely a growth experience during this journey where I typically, just so you guys can get a little insight into my prayer life, I don't like praying specifically for something, meaning, what do I mean by that? I mean, for me specifically, like, I won't pray for me to pass an exam, right? I just feel like that's too trivial. I'll pray for healing and stuff like that. I'll pray generate, but I typically will just say, Lord, your will be done, right? That kind of thing. And this case, I was like, no, I'm going to pray that she passes the exam. I'm just going out there. And I was scared to do that. Now, why? I was scared to do that because I honestly was expecting to be disappointed. What happens if it doesn't, if it's not God's will? Am I ready to accept that? Am I ready? And as a husband, and this is the part for the spouses out there, some of my greatest challenges in life is when I can't fix or heal or protect my wife or my kids. Okay? Happens to me, cool. I'll fail. It's not a big deal. I'm a big boy. I'll deal with it. Even if I've got to, shed some tears or shed some blood, whatever I got to do. But when we can't save or protect our loved ones, man, it's difficult. So for me, I would say it was one of the few times that I can recall that I prayed specifically for a specific petition, right? For myself. Like, Lord, I need this. I need you to come through on this one. Right? Because it's going to be a long ride home. If she doesn't pass.
But what's beautiful about the sacrament is that, you really are my Simon of Cyrene. And it, praise be to God that you had the day off where you were able to take me to this test location. Now, granted, the exam wasn't until noon. And so we woke up, we had breakfast. At that morning hour, I was able to eat. After that, I mean, there's no way. But in that morning, I was able to eat. We went to Mass together. And then we went, we walked around the neighborhood and did our daily rosary, as we typically do, in the Divine Mercy Chaplet. And then we went in the car, and then it was like, okay, we're on our way, to go there. But I knew that I can count on your prayers. And so that was beautiful, in that in our, in that suffering, if you will, you felt it too.
Oh yeah, I was in knots. Yeah, the whole 2+ hours just thinking to myself. And I brought spiritual reading. And
during the time I was in the test.
During the time you're
okay.
in the test,
yes.
I'm sitting in the car and I can't read, I can't pray. Matter of fact, some of you out there, you saw me put it like, hey, please pray for the special intention, right, that I put on social media. Because I just needed to call our prayer warriors, right? Like, I'm like, this is going to be rough. If it was that struggle, that internal conflict that I had with trusting God, but did I really, right? And I think that's the part, as you started off saying, but do I really trust God? It's kind of that Adam and Eve moment, right? Did he really say not to eat of that tree? And it's just like, as broken individuals, sometimes we can approach our faith in God that way. And I can say that, the Lord probably knew in his gracious, kind, loving, merciful heart that, that we're going to need grace to get through this. And praise be to God that you were able, through your own studies, but obviously by the grace of God, being able to pass it and moving on to this next chapter. And who knows what that may be and what it looks like, but it's definitely, I know, a journey of faith for me. Again, first world problems, right? I get it. Like, oh, that's really difficult. And it's just being really real in that sense, where even in some of these everyday moments, whatever it is you may be dealing with, that, yeah, we're not perfect. We're going to have these doubts or these questions or, just this conflict. And that's okay. It's a part of life, but still take the step forward, as Nichole is saying. Still move forward.
If it's God calling you specifically not to be afraid. And, as we know in Scripture, right, love casts out all fear.
Yeah. And God's ways are above our ways. God's thoughts are above our thoughts. And so to remember that even in your greatest, view of or idea of what you may think is the next thing or the right thing or the best thing, God, you don't even have a clue, right? What God has in store for you, right? So no eye has seen, no ear has heard, right? What God has in store for those who love him. And I think that's a part of it, was just exercising that will and obedience and faith.
The other thing that comes to mind too is that, we talk about the wedding at Cana, right? And so here Jesus is in his, he performs his first miracle at a wedding. And what happens to this couple is that, they run out of wine, and people will say, well, in that time, that was so humiliating that for your guests, you run out of wine. But really, spiritually, what does that mean is when you run out of wine is that the couple by themselves will wind up empty. And in anything that we pursue, if we rely on ourselves, we're always going to come up short. We're always going to come up empty. And we need the Lord's intervention. And, Our Lady says, do whatever he tells you, listen to him. And it just strikes me to say that during whatever God is asking us to do or in our life, we should always be attentive to the Lord and what is it that he's asking us to do. And as we know that it's through God's grace. So God comes through, he gives us the grace, which is symbolized with the wine. And then what happens? It ends up tasting much better.
Yeah, it's choice wine. It's super abundant, right? As far as the graces that flowed from that wine.
Right. And so we get the grace from God to do whatever it is that he's calling us. And it turns out that his will is more than what we can even imagine for ourselves.
That's right. Yeah, I think that this has been, a great celebratory moment, but not just in the achievement in and of itself. That wasn't the point.
Right.
But the spiritual journey and the marital journey together, right? That as a one flesh union, we really did go through it together, right? Like the sleepless nights, a whole lot of them.
It was. I would say there was some more like restless. Like I slept, right? But I just was up a lot.
A lot. And I knew she was up a lot. She let me know when she was up a lot. But that's the beauty about this journey, right? For you couples out there, those, again, you discerning marriage, is like, this is what it's about. That Simon of Cyrene, that coming alongside one another, being each other's battle partner. The very least I could have done, because I can't take the test for my wife.
Even though I wanted him to.
Yeah, I'm not that gifted. But if I could have, I would have, right? More importantly, I was able to pray and fast and, demonstrate compassion, enter into that moment with her, right? Because it was tough. You were stressed, and, we've had different discussions, and we'll probably go into different episodes about the challenges, the filters that we go into, but how tempting it would be during this stressful 3 weeks of, just feeling the anxiety and then maybe not being as loving as we would think the other one should be, right? So taking things personal, getting defensive, but not seeing it for what it is, right? That my wife is stressed out. It's a big deal. We pulled the trigger, and here we have to take this exam. There's no other exam that you could reschedule in July
even though
or August.
I wanted to.
Even though we wanted to.
It wasn't offered.
So I just, it's less about the achievement, even though we're proud of Nichole, but it's more about that spiritual journey and that marital journey. That this is a great opportunity for us to unite as a one flesh union, to pray, to fast for one another, to enter into the suffering, the angst, the anxiety, the stress together, right? And to help lift each other up. This idea of marriage and being married, as we were, just talking about, even as we were reflecting on the marriage summit and listening to Christopher and Wendy West, and talking about we get married in front of the altar of sacrifice, underneath a crucifix, and that most people only come into the marriage looking for joy and happiness, not realizing that there's going to be suffering and mourning as a part of that as well. Both beautiful in and of themselves, because one can lead to the other, right? Mourning and suffering will lead to a greater joy that you don't really understand at this moment, but can. And I think these are what these moments are made of, right? Truly living that crucifixion type love. That in this moment, again, this is a very small example of where Nichole was going through some anxious times and puts a lot of pressure on herself. I was able to come alongside with her and just experience that with her.
And as I was saying to really assess your day, if you are feeling anxious, to see, are you off kilter, if you will? Are you trying to put more on yourself and not giving it to God?
Yeah. Yeah. You've heard the saying, right? Let go and let God. And then how much of that are you trying to control yourself? We're both control freaks. We're broken people, right? So there's a huge temptation that to just do it on our own and be self-reliant rather than selfless and giving that to God.
Yes.
Well, love, it's been a great episode just kind of talking through this. And, we didn't fall off the face of the earth. We didn't, nothing drastic happened to us. We just had some stuff going on, right? And I think that's okay. And so for those of you out there that life's a little bit messy right now with everything that we have going on, count your blessings, right? Know that God is with you. Know that we're praying for you. And know that, in this marital union, that it takes 3 to get married, right? That God will give us the grace, that he will fill our wine jars up when they're empty. So rely less on God. Rely less on one another. I almost was blasphemous right there. That's not good. Rely less on each other in that sense, and look more to God at the center and at the core of your life. And be careful of what you say on camera, because that could lead you to a dark place. So, as we finish off this weekend where we're celebrating our freedom, right? Independence Day. We wish all of you, especially those of you who fought for our freedom, died for freedom. I know we have many people in my family who have done so. We thank all of you and salute all of you men and women out there who so bravely fought to protect our freedoms as Americans. And we're very grateful and blessed to be in this country. And so we hope that you had a safe and blessed 4th of July for those of you who are in the United States of America. And if not, hopefully you had a good time anyway. And may God bless you and keep you, and we'll see you next time.